Every writer faces the test of rejection eventually. And when you do, you have to make a choice. Do you keep going in spite of it, or do you let it define you and who you are and what you can do? In today's video, I'm sharing what my experiences with rejection taught me about the writing process and how those same lessons can help you on your writing journey. Hey, y'all, welcome to today's Live with Lisa. If you're new here, my name is Lisa, and I create videos that help you learn how to write and live God's way. If you want to honor God with both your life and your writing, this is the place for you. Also, we partner every week here with an amazing ministry called Our Given Purpose Ministries, which helps you grow in your walk with God. So make sure you follow them as well. So, rejection is one of those things that is just such a difficult thing for so many writers to deal with. We all know it's kind of part of the process. We know it's pretty much inevitable, but it's still, that doesn't make it any easier for us to deal with. That doesn't make it any less painful. And I am not immune to this at all. I have absolutely been on this journey. And so I wanted to share some of the things that I've experienced in my writing journey and the lessons that I've learned, particularly about rejection. Before I get started, though, I want to point you back to two different live streams that I did that are also about this similar topic. One is how to handle writing rejection like a pro, because again, it is inevitable. We all will have to deal with it at some point in our writing journey. And so that live stream will help you get with giving you some practical tips to help you navigate that, not if, but when it happens. The second live stream is about how God redeemed my story as a writer and some of the things that he has brought me through in my writing journey, and how he is still redeeming my story. So make sure you check both of those live streams out. I will have the links for you below in the description, and I believe that they will encourage you and challenge you to move forward in your own writing process. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. As I said, rejection is inevitable. And the first lesson that I learned in my writing journey about rejection is that rejection is not personal. It feels like it is. It's definitely painful in a way that feels personal, but it's really not. It often has absolutely nothing to do with you or the quality of your work. I know that might sound hard to believe, but it's true. Many times when we experience rejection in our writing journey, it actually has nothing at all to do with us or our value, certainly not our self-worth, but it can feel that way because it hurts. And so it's a lot of times it is about things that are completely outside of our control. And so that may feel, depending on how you approach that, that may make you feel better or worse. But the reality is, I hope that it does make you feel better, because when things are out of our control, that means we don't need to take ownership of them. We don't need to hold on to them and beat ourselves up if we experience disappointment, because those are things that were out of our hands anyway. We had no control over them. So in my own writing journey, I've shared this in those previous live streams I talked about, but I went through several years where I wrote several novels and tried to acquire a literary agent, tried to obtain a representation from a literary agent with both of those novels. And so I queried agents on two separate occasions with two separate books, and went through a lot of rejection in that process. For those of you who don't know, querying agents is a part of the traditional publishing process. You query agents, you send them a partial manuscript or a full manuscript, depending on what they request. And if they like it, they will offer representation and you'll sign with them. And then you will go on with that agent to get a traditional publishing deal with a traditional publisher. In the best case scenario, right? It doesn't happen with everyone, doesn't happen with a lot of writers actually, but that is what you're aiming for. And that's what I was trying to do. So both of query agents, I worked hard for years. I believe I spent about 7 years trying to spend about each novel, really refining it, polishing it, and making the best that I thought it could be. And I reached out and started querying agents, and the rejections still piled up though. Even though I had put in all that work, I had worked with a writing group and for years, and they reviewed the work, gave feedback, and I made improvements. I did everything that I thought was right to do. I did everything according to what is recommended. I followed all the steps and I dotted every I and crossed every T. And it still didn't matter at the end of the day. I still got those rejections. I still experienced those no's, and it was still painful. And so it's important for you to understand that there were a lot of reasons why I had to deal with those rejections. Again, everyone goes through that process. And there's all kinds of reasons why agents probably said no to my work. It could have been because of their personal preferences. Many of it just wasn't for them. It could have been about timing. They may have signed a book that was very similar to mine. It could have even just been because truly my books weren't ready to be published yet. And after looking back over the past several years, looking at the manuscripts again several years later, I think that was a key point, that those stories just weren't ready to be published yet. As hard as I worked on them, they weren't at that level. And so regardless, it felt personal, but the rejection really was not personal. A lot of times it had things that I'll never know the full reason why all of the agents passed, right? Or why many of them passed. But there were a few that didn't, and that's another story for another day. But I'll never have the background on why all of those no's were no's. And that's really the point, is that rejection is not personal. It often doesn't have to do with you as a person, and it often even doesn't have to do with your work. So even if you're not pursuing traditional publishing, even if you're pursuing self-publishing, for my self-publishing authors out there, you're going to experience rejection too. You're going to experience people not buying the book that you thought might buy it. You're going to experience those negative reviews that you were really not hoping for, right? And you could be frustrated by. And even those things are not usually about you. Many times people, when they review a book negatively, it says more about them than it does about you. They may be dealing with their own hangups, and they may have their own issues that they're bringing to your work that are just personal for them. They just may not like that particular book that you write, and there was nothing you could do to convince them otherwise from the beginning. They may have some issues that they brought to that book, and they might be projecting that have more to do with what they're going through at the time. And maybe they gave that negative review based on what they're feeling at that moment. We never know what people are going through when they pick up our work. And many times they are dealing with things that have nothing to do with us, nothing to do with our book, and just everything to do with what is happening in their lives. And so that's why we can't take rejection personally. We have to really resist that as much as possible, because we almost never know the full details of what's happening around that rejection we're dealing with. Many times we don't have hardly any details at all. And so if we take everything personally, it can make it really hard for us to move forward, because again, so much is out of our control. So that's the first lesson I learned. The second lesson I learned is that there are different types of rejection, and that we need to respond to them differently. There are different types of rejection that we experience as writers, and we can't treat them all the same. There's a difference, for example, between you experiencing rejection in the form of those negative reviews, right? If you're self-publishing your work, and even if you traditionally publish, if you're experiencing those negative reviews that hurt your feelings and really, make you feel not so good, that there's a difference between that, for example, and getting, being in your writing group and having the writers in your group reject certain aspects of your book. Maybe there's parts of your book that don't resonate with them, and they don't care for it, and they give you feedback about that. Those are two completely different scenarios and two completely different kinds of rejection. And we need to make sure that we treat them differently and that we approach them accordingly. One group of people, those strangers on the internet, they don't know and they don't probably care that much about your work, if we're being honest, especially if they haven't really taken that effort to really get to know your work very well. They're just, those negative comments and things like that. The other group, though, your writing group that you're connected to, they probably do know you pretty well, and they probably know your work pretty well if you've been involved. And so they should genuinely want to help you. That should be their goal. They shouldn't be, in an ideal scenario, they shouldn't be trying to hurt you with their feedback. But if you're equally devastated by the strangers on the internet as you are by the people in your writing group who are trying to help you get better, you're going to go through an equal kind of emotional roller coaster in both of those scenarios, even though they're very different. If you're equally devastated by people who don't love your work, even if they're giving you constructive criticism, if you take that as rejection, you'll overreact to every scenario that you face. You'll take those comments from strangers on the internet and you'll overreact to them to where you start lashing out and having problems coping, even though those comments are coming from strangers who don't know you. And at the same time, you'll dismiss feedback from people who care about you and want to help you get better. And, and in many cases, that feedback actually has merit and it really can help you get better. I'll give you an example from my own personal life. Have to say, give a disclaimer up front, was not my proudest moment, okay? Was not my best moment, and I had to learn from it. But years ago, I was in a writing group where I presented some of my work to get feedback. And I got some feedback from one particular writer that didn't sit well with me. It basically hurt my feelings. Okay, I was kind of triggered by it a little bit. I'll be honest. And so I didn't respond well to the feedback. I didn't really take it seriously. I didn't implement it. I kind of just dismissed it and just did my own thing. I wasn't, yelling at this particular person or angry with them necessarily. I wasn't, mean to them, but I kind of dismissed what they had to say. And I came to learn later on as I grew and became a better writer and honestly just matured as a person, I realized that there was actually a lot of merit to what they said. And that if I had taken that feedback and really applied it and really thought about it, I might have actually been able to get further with that manuscript. And I might have had more success with it if I had really thought about what they had to say. So it was kind of a painful lesson for me because I realized that I could have missed an opportunity with that piece of work if I had listened to that feedback and applied it. But what it taught me was a valuable lesson about not taking feedback and rejection so personally that it keeps me from really hearing and understanding who it's coming from and applying the proper context. Context is key. It is so important for us to put rejection or what feels like rejection in its proper place. Is this coming from people who don't care about you, aren't concerned with what you're dealing with, and are not trying to help you? Or is it coming from people who do care about you, who do support you, and who do want to see you do well? Very important to keep that in mind. I spoke about this in a previous live stream. It might have been the one about rejection. I can't remember. But it was a quote from Brene Brown, which I love, where she talked about what it means to be in the arena and what that really looks like in terms of how to receive rejection from different people. And basically what she says, I'm paraphrasing, but basically if you're in the arena where you're putting your work on display, you're putting it out there for people to see and to absorb and consume, you have to make sure that you're taking into consideration what the people in the stands, the people watching, what their position is. Are they in the arena with you? Are they actually putting their work on display as well? Are they invested in putting their own work out there? Have they, had the courage to do that? Because if they haven't, and they're just throwing popcorn from the seats, so to speak, then they're just spectators. And their opinions don't matter as much as the ones of the people who are in the arena with you. who are doing the work and taking the same hits that you are. Very powerful revelation and insight from Brene Brown. And I really learned a lot from that. And it helped me to apply to these types of situations in my own life and the rejection that I dealt with. So really important when it comes to not taking rejection so personally in so many ways. The third lesson that I think is really powerful as well that I learned about rejection in my own writing journey is to never let the fear of rejection lead to desperation. This is a big one. For so many writers, we go through this weird kind of duality where on one hand, we are afraid to put our writing out there in general, right? We're afraid to submit to writing groups. We're afraid to submit to editors. We're afraid to publish our work just in general, because we're afraid of the backlash. We're afraid of how our work will be received. And so we deal with that fear of rejection. I know exactly what that's like. I've absolutely been there. But on the other hand, we also deal with this odd kind of just feeling like we are like our work, maybe can't be touched, and maybe if we put it out there, that it's good enough to put out there, and that we don't have to deal with that rejection. But if we're not careful, that fear that we feel, that understandable fear even of that rejection, it can drive us to do things that we really shouldn't be, and really have us operate outside of character, even if we're not careful. There may be times when you write, when you publish, where you might have opportunities. It might open some doors for you, and it might put you in a position to really just grow in different areas. If you have a small business, for example, you may have speaking opportunities that come out of your writing. You may have the chance to work with a dream, editor or literary agent if you're pursuing traditional writing as well. You may have the opportunity to work with a dream publisher, or even just collaborate with an author that you really admire and look up to. And those opportunities can be amazing. They can be really exciting when they come your way. But we have to be careful not to let that fear of rejection drive us to the point where we start taking opportunities just because we can get them. Right? Just taking whatever comes our way just because it's available, and we don't want to miss out. Fear of missing out can be a dangerous thing for writers, particularly for kingdom writers, if we're not careful. We have to always make sure that we're in alignment with God and what His will for our life is. I talk about that a lot on Live with Lisa, the importance of being in alignment with the will of God and really seeking what He has for us. But that's particularly important when it comes to who we work with and who we partner with, who we collaborate with in our writing journey. Some of these things may be things you've never thought of before. But it's important for you to have this in mind in case it comes up. It may be that you have kind of a surprise opportunity that comes up that you weren't expecting. And you have to really think through what you will do ahead of time so that you don't get caught off guard in these situations. You can't get so starry-eyed by whoever it is you have the chance to work with, or wherever you have the opportunity to go as a writer. You can't get so starry-eyed that you end up blindly accepting opportunities that don't actually fit in with your values. You want that's that subtle form of compromise that can creep in if we're not careful. We want to make sure that we are not so afraid of hearing another no, or continuing to hear no's, that we take the first yes that we have the opportunity to get. And just being full transparency, I have had some opportunities to work with people I admired. And at times I had that temptation where I let the fear of rejection drive me a little bit. And I let scarcity drive me of thinking this will be the only opportunity because I had heard so many no's in the past, because I had had so many doors closed. When those few yeses did appear, I was tempted to jump on them. And I made some mistakes in my journey where I kind of looked at some opportunities and with some certain people, and I really made some mistakes there in terms of really being a little bit too eager to get involved with certain things that ended up not working out the way I thought they would. And so it's so important for us to learn that in our writing journey, that we kind of need thick skin at the end of the day. We have to have that mental toughness when we experience rejection, to not let it make us jaded or make us desperate for those opportunities, but to continue to seek the Lord in prayer about every opportunity he gives us, every chance to partner, every chance to collaborate with someone. We have to make sure that we're checking in with God and making sure that this is really something that he wants us to do. There are so many examples, even in scripture, of what happens when you partner with the wrong person, or you partner with the right person, and even in the wrong timing. And so it is so important that we are intentional about those decisions, and we don't let the fear of rejection drive us. It can cause us to make some costly and time-consuming and really heartbreaking mistakes. And so I don't want that to be you. I want you to have victory in your writing journey. So learn from my mistakes, learn from the things that I learned. And I encourage you in your own writing journey that it will be a blessing to you if you are able to move forward and do things in that way. So I also, as we are talking about mistakes and things that I've learned, I want to encourage you to created that will help you go even more into detail about this particular topic. It is a free masterclass that I have created called 5 Common Mistakes Writers Make and How to Avoid Them. The link is in the description below if you want to check it out and take advantage of that, because it will really walk you through the key mistakes and limiting beliefs that are slowing your writing process and really causing you to be stuck in your writing process. Again, these are things that I have learned in my own journey and in the work that I've done to help other writers in their process. And so I believe it will really help you as well. Not only will you learn what mistakes to avoid, but you'll also learn how to move forward and finish your book as well. And so make sure you take advantage of that. Again, link in the description below. So I hope that this live stream encouraged you and really helped you see that I'm not so different from you. I've been through a lot of those same mistakes, those same moments of disappointment that you have, and I am still in a work in process. God is still having me on this journey. He's taking me a different route in terms of what he has for me in the future in terms of writing and publishing, and I'll be sharing more about that in the coming weeks and months, but I'm excited about the journey that he has me on, and I'm grateful for the lessons that he has had me learn. And so I'm passing on those lessons to you as I walk through them and as I am a work in progress. So again, hope this encouraged you today, and I will see you next week, same time, same place, here for more Live with Lisa. Until next time, take care, God bless, and happy writing, y'all.